Some people still make faces to see me in these places. I don't just hang downtown. I rock, I knock, I get around. Some people bring their children to see me in this building. That's right. I color good, my ABCs are very sound. A, B, C, D. I rock, I knock, I get around. Some people still make faces like I'm from outer space. It's not nice, but that's what type I get around. Get around, round, round, round. Some people send me biscuits here at lunch and serve to critics there. But when they need a drink, I get around, round, 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 a whole round. It makes me a whole round. Get around, a whole round. I rock, I knock, I rock, I knock, I knock. Get around, get around, round, round, round and around, round, round, round and around, and around, and around, round, round. I get around.
Gaver's work is known as performance art. It blends dance, percussion, props, and video to enhance the meaning of poetry. We'll be hearing from people who have worked with Chasen Gaver, as well as watch Gaver pass on his work to a new generation of writers.
The worried rat expired. My poetry is very rhythmic because I grew up near Detroit, Michigan in the 1960s, and I was very influenced by the beat that I heard on the radio during the Motown era. As goes Diana Ross, so goes the nation. You jump up, you jump up, you jump up, you come down. And the whole
I've seen Chasen's work develop over the past decade. In the early 70s, I'd never seen performance poetry. Then I see this guy with bracelets made from forks up to his elbow, reading his own works and doing things like pulling a telephone receiver out of his pants. He was the first person I knew who made poetry come alive with the use of everyday props.
The Boat is Gaver's punk rock poem. It's about a friend who was losing himself on the fast lane, you know, floating along like on a boat. Gaver decided to reach out to him in his own language, using a punk attitude, the right color hair, the right sunglasses.
The boat. I feel as if I get on the boat and get off the boat. You never get off the boat like a car is sunk in a sea song. What here did you get on? Most people miss the boat. For them what goes has always gone. I am about to board the boat. It has taken me 3 years to get back here. Most people never get here. Many will spend a lifetime not getting here. They get drunk. They get high. They get older. They get passed over, much like the banter between the waiter and the biennial customer aboard the boat. Like a saber sunk in the sheath of a sword. What are the qualities of those who climb aboard? I like to think I'm tough enough. No one could break a bottle of champagne across my bow, and not a single rib would crack. Yet despite my external resilience, I must be hollow behind my back. Something I have in common with the boat. Something that keeps us both afloat. What keeps you clinging to this buoyant shore like a perennial passenger sunk inside the boat itself.
There are a lot of theatrical elements in Chasen's poetry. In a way, his poems are like mini-dramas in that they create a recognizable persona. Someone like Whoopi Goldberg does this using monologues. I find it interesting that Chasen uses verse to do this. I've worked with Chasen as an editor, and I'm aware of his involvement in the issues of the day. Chasen is interested in issues involving women, gays, black people, and other minorities. I think his concern for multiple social and political issues brings a balance to his entire body of work.
When on Thursday comes an invitation, written in literate Nicaraguan, signed by Frank Stella, by Allen Ginsberg, by Isabelle Letellier, you stop and stare. You taste their fear. And you read the broken English fast translation, and you send in a donation, and you wonder why the cause of literacy is such a threat if it is aided, and you wonder how the world around us got to be so jaded. Your name is Millie Cravedi.
Uh-huh.
You prefer to be called Emily.
Uh-huh.
You're now a celebrity.
Uh-huh.
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 I've worked with Chasen for at least 8 years as a co-performer or assisting on his audio tapes, but mostly I've made my contribution as his personal photographer and, of course, best friend. This is shot from 2009, first performed in 1983. There was also the 2009s, which was the zip code backup group for the performance of this poem. Sort of Diana Ross and the Supremes, only we didn't sing exactly. This appeared in the Washington Post as part of the promotion for Chasen's first performance at the National Theater. I like this picture because there's a softness in his face, which is sometimes missed in his work because it's so dramatic. And the fact that he's holding this tiny, delicate creature, and he's holding it so gently. And I wanted to capture this gentle, human side of him. I've done a number of other promotional photos which show Chasen with his props, assuming a character or attitude for his performance. He comes up with great, inexpensive costumes. Somehow he makes thrift shop clothing fashionable.
Most performance poets are trying to entertain, and Chasen both entertains and enlightens. He's fighting back at our bland, rhythmless, mainstream society. He's fusing Motown and punk rock, and the urgency is present in his work because of the intensity of this fusion. I guess there is a stridency to take someone with you because it's his reaction to the harassment and discrimination he experienced in Philadelphia.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Get out of my sight.
Every crossroads has its gutter, where a growl becomes a mutter, where a ball break tire is spun, hisses issued from a passing vehicle whose occupants hit and run. If they didn't mean it, why did they scream it? A sign is posted, but they won't read it. We get their message and we heed it. Ban handguns, but stock stun guns. Stick to your guns, walk softly, and carry a big cup of coffee. Lift the lift, inquire of your tormentor. What was that name you just called me? Stick to your guns like glue. If you're driven crazy, take someone with you.
Bound together by a network of lines oscillating with poetic energies, one-liners, TV jingles, and the lyrics of the songs compelling us to communicate, singing of what we are with a single tongue, a national melody, seeking harmony, meshed together in a reluctant unity.
If you jump At a New York window, tied to a despondent lover, be a direct hit on a born-again bigot. Don't let them get away with it. Make the archdiocese cease playing favorites. Do it now. The sooner the better. If you think of it later, then do it later, but just make certain later isn't never again. Come to the rescue. Take someone with you.
Bound together by a network of lines, lines wrapping us inside our collective inertia, propelling us toward an unknowable future. Webs of entangled humanity, delineating a convergence of heritage, focusing our divergent potentials, linking our today with tomorrow.
If they didn't mean it, why did they scream it? You don't have to pick a fight. You don't have to get violent. You don't have to pander, pester, or plead, but promise me you won't go quietly. When the going gets tough, the tough get clever. Right or wrong, write another letter. Get the bastard's license number, call it in. Get mad and get even. Crosswords at the crossroads. Troubling, annoying, nothing new. Don't turn your back. Their wreck will be your ruin. Don't let them run you down. Take someone with you.
I really like working with Chasen. And one of the big reasons is that we share a commitment to social change. His humor has an incisiveness, but he's looking at society and culture and not at the audience. He genuinely works from a point of vulnerability with his audience. And, you know, it's this genuine quality that I think keeps his humor from being cynical and aloof. Okay, for example, in the poem, Do You Feel Fat?, he has us look at weight reduction, political aggression, and class distinction, and we have a good time.
Do you feel fat? Rather than stand, do you reach for things with your left hand? Do you feel fat? Is your upper arm as big around as your ankle? Is that diet pill necessary? Do you feel fat? Is that sleeping pill because of that diet pill? If you had 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 containers of Haagen-Dazs in your freezer, and your grocery began to stock frozen Gladia, would you attempt to trade? Do you feel fat? Has your tummy begun to resemble the southern border of the Soviet Union? They want South Yemen. We want North Yemen. Do you think they'd be willing to trade? Do you feel fat? Do you hang out with people who think that disco is the root word for discovered? Do you dance for hours and still gain weight? That isn't a diet pill you're taking, is it? You're hip and narrow-minded, and you want to be narrow-hipped. Are you willing to trade? Are you ready to admit some get roses, others get raises, but you have yet to meet a fat Japanese tourist? Diet and be successful. Do you feel fat? Is there such a thing as too much God? Can one be spiritually obese? They got Jesus. We seek justice. Do you think they'd be willing to trade? Ask them. Ask them. What have you got to lose?
I'm all for a laugh in poetry, but occasionally I like to experiment with loftier ideas. For example, I was very influenced by two books written by Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism and The Life of the Mind. Arendt says that there are two distinct types of individuals, thinkers and doers. And in my poem, Fresh Out of Ideas, I try to discern what happens when people turn idle thoughts into deadly actions.
Fresh out of ideas. We've got some new opinions. Just passed them out this PM. Just let us know where you go wrong. 10 cents a copy for the paper they're on. Untried, untapped, untested. There's no number to call should you get arrested. 'Cause we think for ya, but can't reach ya. Without lines of sights and blueprints of taste and onomatopoeia. Thoughts hot off the press, but fresh out of ideas. Waiting for application, an army of occupation to induct our observations. We got some new opinions, unrisked, unraveled, undone. Here, take 'em on a run. Don't mind our inertia. They're anyone's guess, but fresh out of ideas.
Chasen demystifies poetry by the way he creates his work. And that's exactly what happened at our performance at DC Jail in 1985. One inmate commented on the fact that Chasen establishes common ground by choosing everyday things to write about. When Chasen celebrated a Washington neighborhood in his poem called 20009, the inmates got it immediately. They realized that poetry wasn't so difficult to write after all. Chasen was working with a group of people who are different, and he used his poetry, which is also different, as a tool to meet social educational needs.
3 years ago, I moved inside these triple zeros. I moved aside my one-track heroes. I cried, well, hey, here anything goes. Black women in business suits, white men in kimonos, Peruvians looking fine, so very too. 0009.
As many of us know, poetry is about feelings and experiences. In his presentation to young audiences, Gaver engages the students by encouraging them to develop poems from their daily events.
How many of you have ever read a poem that you did not understand? All the hands are going up, okay. One of the things to keep in mind is that often poets use symbols in their poetry. What we try to do sometimes is to convey a thought by using something that represents something else. Now what I'm going to do is a poem that has to do a little bit with the peace movement. And I started to write a poem about the weather, but it became something a little more than a poem about the weather. And as I do this poem, I want you to watch this umbrella. And afterwards, I'm going to ask you to tell me all the different ways in which I used this umbrella and what it represented in the poem. The poem is called Political Climate. Heat won't lift, humidity sticks, cold front comes calling, barometers everywhere falling. Weather satellites begin to listen, 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 listen. Weather watch on Hiva begins. And on Washington it starts raining again. Can you hear the rain? Can you hear the rain? Can you hear the rain? I can hear the rain. Can you hear the rain? Can you hear the rain? Can you hear the rain? I can hear it again. Dry heat, ignitable heat. Blowing in, desert discontent in cumulus, and thunderhead descends, and on Jerusalem it starts raining again. Can you feel the rain? Can you feel the rain? Can you feel the rain? I can feel the rain. Can you feel the rain? Can you feel the rain? Can you feel the rain? I can feel it again. Umbrellas open up from Berlin to Bangkok. Laser lightning starts striking Earth's teary face. umbrellas open up in outer space. In outer space. As a worldwide weather watch begins and the whole human race is reined in. Can you hear it? Again, can you feel it? Again, 'cause baby, I have seen the rain. What did I do with it? Yes. Okay, so it represented a satellite, a common umbrella, but in the poem, it actually represented a satellite. Okay, I used it as an umbrella to shield myself from what? The rain. Now, let me ask you this. What could that rain be if you're thinking about war? Bomb. And what happens when a bomb goes off?
It separates.
It separates, and then what happens? It comes down in a rainy form, or what we call radiation or fallout. What I tried to do in my poem is to use different symbols. The rain symbolized that fallout that comes from the bombs. I wanted to acquaint people with what a war of that type, a nuclear war, would actually be like. And since we've never really experienced that in this country, I wanted to actually use something that people might be familiar with, a storm imagery. And this concept in poetry is called symbolism.
After getting the words of the poem, the students match gestures and movement, and then the poem is actually performed by the class.
And Wednesday did homework. Study hard. And Thursday, watch the Cosby Show. On the TV, okay. And
Mr. Gaver has performed here at Sousa Junior High School for the past several years as a part of the Young Audiences program. Our students really look forward to his coming to Sousa. We like his spontaneous, creative art form. And I think what he does helps to build bridges in our community's culture.
A generous menace, zoom zoom, a fast taxi, and the driver is making me nervous, drinking a glass of red wine, while
I think it's important to understand that the social context of his poems was often inspired by chit-chat at parties of friends or events at late-night discos. We talked about everything from politics to philosophy to art openings. Most often, Chasen was taking notes throughout.
Able-bodied, passed out, blasted, bored, all bored. When all else fails, and all else always fails, we parole the thoughts we've recently jailed. And when we don't know what to do, we scribble, scribble, scribble. Surprise has a lot to do with my work. For example, I was very surprised at some of the suspicious activity going on outside my co-op apartment window. And yeah, down, 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 under suspicion. What's he giving? What's she taking? What's down on that list they're making? Just around the corner is collusion. Just inside the alley is collision. Just across the bridge there is derision. Just an instep closer, just a smidgen. What's he giving? What's she taking? What's the code they're bent on breaking? What's the feed they hunger for? The suspicion is ugly, but the powder is wonderful. Somewhere on my feet, but I'm still reeling. Someone's on my beat, now I can feel him. Someone's too in touch, someone must be crushed. What's he buying, what's she selling, what's she writing, what's he telling, what's the flag and flower for? The suspicion is ugly, but the wonder is powerful. Everywhere you go there is sedition. Everyone you try there has suspicions. Daggers in their eyes stab with subversion. Villains in cloaked minds make their assertions. What's he giving? What's she taking? What's down on that list they're making? What's worth this diminishing? The suspicion is ugly, but its traces are finishing. Just around the corner is collusion.
Someone's on my beat now, I can feel him. Everything I read is a new version. Everything I write should cast aspersions. Everything I say is not defensible. Everything I read is not defaceable. Everything I write is not erasable. The suspicion is ugly, but it's finite and traceable. Langston Hughes wrote a short poem that I'm going to do for you as a non-performance poem. And this poem is called I Loved My Friend. I loved my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I loved my friend. Now that's to show you that you don't always have to jump up and down and use noisemakers to get attention. You can just stand up and read a nice poem, and the audience will often appreciate it.
As you've seen, Chasen Gaver takes an unconventional approach to poetry. Classic poets sometimes contemplated the muse, or they let the spirit move them. For Chasen Gaver, even inspiration can be a performing element.
That poem came to me like magic. It's of just one mind and it kicks out on time and it kicks out on time and it kicks out in time and it's magic. It's enticing. It's realizing. It's more pleasing. It's so easy. It's of just one mind and it kicks out on time and it kicks out on time and it kicks out in time and it's magic. It's always windward. It's a bit cindered. It's prenatal, ha, but often fatal. It's of just one kind and it kicks out on time and it kicks out on time and it kicks out in time and it's magic.